doing? We're here today looking at the new MFM More Feedback Machine 2.5 from Yuhi. This actually has just come out and it's an extension or an upgrade to the original version 2. Now, those of you who maybe watch the channel regularly will have known that we've actually spoken to Urs about this a couple of super booths ago. So this is like quite a big project for them. I think this is one of his pet projects, and it's at its core, it's essentially a sort of Uber delay effect, but it's so much more than that. So those of you who are familiar with the original will notice that that's the original interface. That was version 2 interface. It's now been sort of flattened down and created in a more sober and perhaps easier to understand way, because it is quite complex. I mean, that's the one thing about this. It's 4 delay lines and filtering and feedback matrix with other effects and MIDI modulation. There's a whole lot of stuff going on. Perhaps a quick look. So as well as the interface, we've got new input sections, so you can drive the gain on the inputs. You can also affect the transients on the input. We've also got 2 new effects, which are granular and diffuser. These are sort of effects 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 on each delay line. For those of you who don't know this at all, we've also got 4 LFOs, 2 envelope generators and a mod matrix and all kinds of MIDI mapping, which enables you to create these kind of insanely complex, almost algorithmic. I mean, it is kind of like building your own effects algorithm. If you think of those kind of 90s studio effects, like big rack mount systems that had all these kind of weird and wacky effects, it's capable of that sort of stuff. I mean, we can do delays, sure, but that's really underselling it. We can do resonation, we can do reverbs, we can do all kinds of stuff. So we're going to basically dig in and take a look. Before we get going, I just want to let you know this video is sponsored by Yuhi, and like I said, it's one of those products that Urs himself has been working on for a really long time, and I think they just want to get it out there and see it check out. And so far, I'm really enjoying what I'm hearing because it's right in my world of ambient stuff. So let's get a quick word on the setup. So I've got nifty keys here, which has got various bits of modular in. I've got the Nymphis. I've got an APC Mini here, which I'm using to volume of the dry signal, volume of the effects return, volume of the wet mix, volume of the dry mix on these faders. And it just means because there's so much MIDI control, it just makes it a lot easier to deal with. I'm running this in Logic here, and what I'm doing is I'm taking everything into a live input, which you can hear there, and then I'm returning it back. I had to set this up as a MIDI effects in Logic because that's the only way I could get the MIDI into it. It's a little bit more complicated to set up in Logic than perhaps other DAWs, but it's worth getting MIDI into this because it has clock, it has MIDI control, it has keyboard input. There's a lot of things that you could do with it. Anyway, what I'm going to do is just play through some of the presets that I found. It comes with 400. There are a ton of them. I've favorited a bunch here, and we'll just flip through and see what it's capable of. So let's start with granular swirl, because this is a sort of shows off one of the new effects. We've got a 1 second buffer in here. Let's see if there's any notes in the preset. No, there's nothing there that we're controlling by MIDI this time, but granular to forward, we'll get a slightly different vibe. Just tweaking the voice here a little bit. So you get the idea. I've got quite a lot of ambient vibe on this one. I mean, I'm going to gravitate towards these because these are the sort of things that I like. But it's just as possible to do sort of regular kind of dubby kind of stuff. So I've got a little kind of, I'm not a reggae player, but that's all well and good, but actually if we look here, there's actually an envelope where if we hold down the MIDI, what it does is this envelope is triggered from MIDI input. So if I do my, it's re-triggered, and if I hold down a chord, I take the dry out of there. We get that kind of interesting sort of tailing off, almost like a kind of enveloped chorus pitch drop. I mean, you know, and this is the kind of stuff that we're getting into with this. So let's take a look at some more. I've got to go for the massive reverb. This foghorn reverb is amazing. So I'm just going to, let's come out of here. There's no MIDI on this, but let's bring up our friend, the IntelliGel. Add a bit of release. Don't want any envelope. That's monster. I think I guess foghorn might indicate. Strasser, as they sometimes say in Germany. Well, or maybe they don't. Okay, let's take a look at some more presets. I mean, there are a lot here which are really interesting, just really sort of unusual multi-effects. Sharp metal objects. Now, this is an interesting one. This is kind of... This is using sort of resonance and feedback shaping to create these kind of unusual, if I take again, now there's also some MIDI control here. If I bring this up, Mod Wheel controls the feedback storm, which is going to create this sort of mad, and if I run out, I've got a panic button, which is actually really handy there. This kind of stops all of the feedback because it's quite easy to get into this world. A lot of plugins that don't really allow, they take it upon themselves to tell you whether or not you can have these kind of self-regenerating feedback loops. There are some that do, but with the More Feedback Machine 2.5, we've got the ability to just cut this out. One thing I would like to have seen, I would like to have seen that under MIDI control, because then you could have had a panic button, because I'm running this on a live input and I might not want to go to the screen. But we've got a master feedback, which we can take down, master feedback, which kind of helps. But it also, we've got a compressor across it, and there's this clipping, which allows, what this does is sort of stops the output from getting too out of control. You can set the level of that. Again, these are nice little touches. Let's just turn that down. There's nice little touches that, because we're dealing in a domain that can be very unpredictable, and we've got these incredibly complex sort of feedback matrices that could create all kinds of stuff. Also, on another note, see these two locked buttons? Because what I've got here is my MIDI controller is controlling the wet signal and the dry signal, and then the wet signal in the plugin and the dry signal in the plugin. And the reason I'm able to do that is because you can set these parameters to be locked, which is really cool, because that means if you're in a situation where maybe you're running this on a send rather than an insert, every time you flip presets, you'd have to set the wet and dry level, but you can lock those. And that's the case for a whole bunch of parameters as well. We can lock pretty much everything. We can't lock that, but so that means that we can set it up to be whichever way we want, and when we're changing presets, we don't have to then readdress those or save them in insert or send mode. Nice touch. This one's called Ambient 2, but it's actually more like a kind of, again, a dub delay. So and we can get that delay going. Too much, we might actually start getting it clipping. And it's quite heavily filtered. There we go, so that's stopping it from getting too crazy. You can see that little green light shows that we can set the clipping level and the kind of clipping as well to medium. But just a word back on this, I mean, the amount of parameters that there are on this is insane. So we've got filters on each one. We can put the filter across the delay input, the delay feedback, the delay output, the dry input, the dry left, the dry right. I mean, really tons of lots of different things. So in many ways, it's sort of almost like a synthesis module. You know, it's like a combination of the two. And as such, you sort of do need to get your head into it. I don't profess to have got all the way in there. And I would like to say that there are plenty of videos out there. You've got a series on these, which kind of gets a bit more into the depth and the nitty gritty, sort of more than we can go here. One thing I should mention, if you want to see more, I'm going to post some more sort of noodling and jamming on our Patreon, which you can get to here. Our Patreon actually is expanding to have a lot more stuff. We've got ad-free videos of everything. We've also got Sonic Talk pre-show, lots of exclusive videos. We posted something from NobCon just the other day, and there are more coming besides. So do keep an eye on that, because it's a growing resource for you if you're interested. Once again, just get to that one by this URL here. Let's take another look. Spitz Mouse. This is an interesting one. This again is just this sort of, it's like an ambient granular just really nice. This goes really nicely with this setup actually, because what I've got here is I'm playing around with the I've got the fulsome clouds in here, so I can do a freeze, and that allows me to pick out some of these notes. Then I can play over the top. So what I'm going to take that down and bring up my poly stuff. The combination of the two is great. Because I'm working this as the live input, there's some really nice tasty things because we've got all this MIDI control. I mean, although, you know, it's designed to go in the DAW, I really like the idea of using it for live input processing and being able to flip presets there, and that's something that I find quite interesting. So let's have a look at another couple of presets. This is kind of like, let's take the R delayed out. For dub effects, yeah. I haven't got any drums set up on this, so you'll have to excuse me. You'll have to make do with my synthesizers. Envelope delay slicer. Let's see what this does. Interesting. So we've got LFOs triggering, we've got, it doesn't look like there's envelopes going on, but... Interesting. Just the dry signal. Again, so many levels of complexity in here. I mean, there are 400 presets in there, so you don't have to kind of get a degree in MFM2 to get going, but it's something that you can really dig deep into, and there's a lot there. Like I say, kind of like some of those massive mega studio effects. Obviously here we've got a much better, much more useful UI. We've got compressors across the outputs. There's all sorts of stuff that we could do. Backdraft, what's this guy like? All sorts of stuff going on there. LFO. Looks like LFO 1 is being... it looks like delay 1 is being triggered in a sort of square wave, multi-stage square wave by LFO 1, which means that the delay times are changing, but they're not doing that thing when you change a knob of going of sort of reep. It's like very sort of pin sharp accurate, so you can create some very interesting effects. And then there's a waveform that's going into panning. There we go. LFO 3 is panning that delay. And then I don't know what's going on in the feedback. I'll attempt to explain, but so feedback 1 is feedback to itself. Feedback delay 1 is feedbacking to 2. Delay 2 is feedbacking to 2. So it's quite simple in many ways. But there's also a phaser across 1 and 2. What happens if we turn the delay up on that? Turn the feedback up on that. Ooh, interesting. Kind of sound designer, isn't it? Already. Okay. Approaching storm. This is kind of interesting. So let's bring a bit of... Now let's see if there's any mod wheel soft clip massive volume boost. Okay, let's see. Interesting, it sounds like phasing, doesn't it? But it's not. It's actually the bandpass filters being controlled by 2 different modulation LFOs. So you get that kind of crossing frequency that you can sometimes get with bandpass. And the mod wheel is just mapped to the soft clip level, so we're just basically turning those up really high. More Feedback Machine 2.5 is available now. It's available for all platforms, although I believe at the time of publishing, AAX was still waiting for a little tweak to be able to be compatible with M1 Max, but it's Mac, PC, VST, AU, all of the usual good stuff. MFM 2.5 is available now, priced at €99, which may seem expensive if you think of it just as a delay, but it's not, is it? It's got 4 delays, it's got this massively complex and flexible feedback matrix, it's got tons of filtering, it's got input processing, it's got MIDI control, LFOs, envelopes, a modulation matrix, plus additional effects on top. So it's more like a complex multi-effects algorithm with a delay at its heart. And it happens to create a sound world that I personally quite enjoy. So if you want to explore something a bit unusual from the twisted mind of Urs and the team, then well worth checking out. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. See you next time.